The Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda have been at odds with one another since the M23 insurrection reappeared in eastern Congo at the end of 2021. On Tuesday, the UN expressed alarm about the possibility of a direct conflict. The Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda have had a complicated and brutal history. Having been under Belgium's colonial, they were subject to numerous atrocities. This laid the foundations for difficulties as they gained independence in 1960 and 1962. In a recent assessment of the situation in the DRC, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres addressed that there was a possibility of a conflict. Over the past quarter of a century, the resource-rich eastern provinces of the Democratic Republic of the Congo have served as operating bases for multiple rebel groups. As a result, the region is an ungovernable arena of contest among its direct neighbors. It will be best if you know how this Rwanda-DRC conflict all began, so let's have a small run-through. The trouble's most recent incarnation began when the military organization known as the March 23 Movement, M23, assaulted the Congolese army in North Kivu in November 2021. The situation was reignited by the M23 offensive, but its root causes were never resolved. This crisis goes back to 1994, when the genocide in Rwanda caused a 2 million refugee migration into nearby nations, the majority of whom went to Zaire, now the DRC. Rwanda and Uganda assisted in the overthrow of Mobutu Sese Seko, the president of Zaire, by aiding Laurent Kabila during the First Congo War. Armed organizations multiplied and acted as mediators in the region's proxy wars as a result of the instability that followed. The conflict in the DRC was far from over. In 1998, Kabila turned on his Rwandan and Ugandan backers, sparking the Second Congo War. The war involved numerous armed groups and foreign powers and resulted in the deaths of millions of Congolese. The Second Congo War officially ended in 2003, but violence has continued to plague the eastern DRC, particularly in the provinces of North and South Kivu. One of the main armed groups in the region is the March 23 Movement, M23, a Tutsi-led rebel group that has been accused of receiving support from Rwanda. Despite a ceasefire mediated by Angola, fighting between the M23 and the DRC army resumed in March 2022. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame accused the Congolese government of bringing cheap but deadly effective Soviet-era missiles to the region and using them to shell Rwandan territory. Members of Tutsi communities alleged that an intimidation campaign was being launched to stop them from registering to vote in the impending presidential elections in December. This reinforced the idea that Tutsis were marginalized in the area and subjected to violent outbursts that were frequent, giving the M23 operations a strong rationale. The horrors perpetrated by the M23 rebels against civilians, in turn, fuel anti-Tutsi rage, thus creating a vicious cycle of violence. Direct communication between the Congolese government and the M23, as envisioned under the Kenya mediation plan, has grown implausible as the violence increases and the DRC elections get closer. President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has stated that there is no doubt that Rwanda has been supporting a rebellion on their soil, but stressed he was still working to establish peaceful relations with Kigali. Rwanda, Uganda, and Burundi consider Eastern Congo an extension of their own territories. Through rebel groups or state-sponsored military presence, these countries have been trying to increase their regional leverage and pursue political goals. The Rwandan regime believes it is responsible for the protection of all Tutsis, including those living in the DRC and other countries. The main nations, such as the United States and the European Union, have refrained from outright denouncing Rwanda. However, there is a consensus that Kigali, which provides the rebels with arms, ammunition, and logistical support, indirectly supports M23. This is already a war coming and countries are ignoring it. Rwandan intelligence services also claim that the Congolese army closely cooperates with the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, a force that includes some of those responsible for the genocide against the Tutsis. In September, Communications Minister Patrick Muyaya and Justice Minister Rose Mutombo set out their case against Kigali in a news conference in the capital. They repeated allegations that DRC's eastern neighbor Rwanda has been backing the Tutsi-led M23 rebels, which Kigali has repeatedly denied. The force has seized swaths of territory in North Kivu, on the two countries' border, since taking up arms again in late 2021 after years of dormancy. Bear in mind that all this is happening when President Felix Tshisekedi has asked his government to fast-track the withdrawal of a United Nations peacekeeping mission to ensure it begins at the end of the year. The mission, called MONUSCO, took over from an earlier UN operation in 2010 to help quell insecurity in the DRC's east, where armed groups fight over territory and resources. But its presence has become increasingly unpopular in recent years for what critics have said is a failure to protect civilians from violence, sparking deadly protests. We should note that the UN is still very active in Rwanda and could give a lot of assistance to the country if a war began with the DRC. The United Nations system in Rwanda consists of 22 UN agencies, programs, and funds, both resident and non-resident. The Human Rights Watch has documented killings and rapes by M23 rebels, targeting civilians caught up in the fighting between the M23 and Congolese forces as they tried to flee to safety. If care is not taken, these deaths will increase and spark up a serious conflict, which is not going to be fought by these two countries, but by many. The presidents of both countries need to find a way to resolve this before it goes out of hand. All armed groups in the eastern DRC, including the M23, need to be disarmed and demobilized. This will require a coordinated effort by the Congolese government, the Rwandan government, and the international community. What is stopping these presidents from solving their problems? Let us know what you think and how these problems could be solved in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Turn on notifications so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.